Hello and welcome to another episode of Time Extend. My name is Adam Ismail and joining me today is...
Brendan Rorison, and we're of course joined by our new fellow co-hosts Andrew and Paul, who are here with us as well. We're back and we're going to be talking about something that isn't actually just racing games again. We're riding this momentum from the running games and we're going straight into something, I'm going to steal your pun, Paul, something a bit tricky. So, getting amped to talk about something tricky, you know. From what I understand, between yourselves, Paul, Andrew, and you as well, Adam, actually, it seems like you have played every single snowboarding game under the sun.
Andrew sent us all, frankly, a disturbing pick. And also, like, I feel like most of them were, like, it was a stack of snowboarding games. And I think, like, 2/3 of them were on the original Xbox. I don't even know how you find these games.
Yeah, we got stuff to talk about today.
Yeah, we got a lot. So this is going to be...
I did some digging.
It's going to be a packed show. We've already tried to discuss, like, you know, keeping this to, like, a couple minutes per game. Because if we let this get out of hand, it's going to be a multi-parter of, you know, the most epic proportions. So, I guess... what we start with, that was
the show ain't called Time Contract.
That's
Adam.
That's true, but I'm having a hard time figuring out like where we begin.
It's true, yeah, it's a hard thing to kind of work out, because I guess, like, before we go into like individual games as well, just talking about the idea of snowboarding games in general, it's fairly interesting. We were talking a little bit off air beforehand as well, but it seemed like in that kind of late 90s, right through into the kind of mid 2000s, snowboarding was all the rage. It was a nice counterbalance to the skateboarding hype that was maybe a little bit before that, but there's a lot of games about snowboarding, even though it wasn't because of like a famous snowboarder, like the way Tony Hawk was attributed to skateboarding and that sort of thing. But I think as a concept, there was just, as we'll talk about when we go through the individual games, there's just so many different avenues you can go down with the snowboarding games.
Yeah, would it help to define some boundaries maybe in terms of what we were and were not looking at? Because I don't know if we played anything that wasn't polygonal 3D, right? I think, did you guys go back to anything further than that?
That's a really good
I didn't
point.
In this case, because it didn't feel relevant to, I think, what we were trying to get at in terms of looking at momentum and movement and all that stuff.
I already asked Brend if he had played Ice Cap Zone from Sonic 3, and he said no.
That's right, Sonic 3.
So.
Yeah, that's all we're talking about, guys, sorry. We're just going to talk about that first 15 seconds of that wondrous zone and how fantastic it is. But I guess we do have to start somewhere. So I think the most obvious place to start, and we could kind of go time like chronologically, but I think if we start with, I imagine we all played what I would say is the biggest snowboarding game series in SSX. I would say we start there or Amped. So it just depends, I guess, like in fitting with Time Extend and what it stands for. Do we go Amped and go for the hipster route, or do we go straight into SSX and set that like kind of benchmark of the most popular series?
I mean, I could also just read off this stack of all this crap next to me here and just rip that Band-Aid off and let you know what we have.
Well, Amped would also satisfy...
Mostly just because I want to see your reactions, because I think it'd be fun.
I think at some point we should get to a lightning round and you just pull a game out of the stack, and that's what we're talking about. But Amped would be good if we were doing this alphabetically, but that feels very chaotic. So let's just start with SSX.
For cowards.
We've all played SSX. We all love SSX, except for the ones like on the PSP and the Wii or whatever. I forget those exist, but yeah. But
I've got thoughts. We'll get there.
I think Paul, you checked out the first one predominantly, which is one that I've barely played, and for some reason did not revisit in the past month or so. So yeah, did it hold up to your memories?
My memories of it. It does, but my memories really were, to be honest, were tricky. Not to want to jump to the sequel straight away, but it does. But Tricky was the one that always it was in my mind of the one that, as we were talking about in the Discord, the one that has the vibe. It brings the vibe more than maybe any other snowboarding game, maybe any other game really. In some ways, like thinking about, they really nailed what the feeling of it. I don't know. It was like the excitement around the whole idea of snowboarding, the coolness factor, and the music, and the everything about that game was just it was fascinating, wasn't it? I mean, yeah, but I didn't play the originals much, to be honest. Even when it came out, I remember I did play it when it came out and played it briefly recently, but it was tricky one I went back to be honest. Which yourself as well, Adam, right?
Yeah, I mean, Tricky was... I had the original because we had the PS2 at launch, but I don't think I played it very much. But then when Tricky came out and it was multi-platform, like, everybody played that game. Like, Tricky exploded. Yeah. And Tricky really is, like...
It's huge.
It's really kind of an SSX 1.5 at the end of the day, isn't it? Like, it carries over...
It's like 1.1 a little bit. It's kind of just a director's cut of the first game in a lot of ways.
Right. Carries over a lot from that first game, but it does it, it executes it better.
Definitely. When Tricky first came out, I actually played it on GameCube because I had a Japanese GameCube. I was like, I've got a game for this.
Oh no!
I think maybe Nintendo hadn't released a game that Christmas. I can't remember. I was like, well, I'll get Tricky and I'll get the Japanese
not the
one.
GameCube board of Tricky. Oh no!
And
that's the one I played too.
It played fine to an extent, but it's when you go and play the PlayStation 2 one, which the game is 100% designed for, with the 4 shoulder buttons. Right? It's basically a different game at that point. I think they even mapped it was weird how the control map on GameCube it didn't show the game in the best light. And even the Xbox One to the same extent, right? With the white and black buttons, it was the same thing. It was
So again, it performs best there because of course it does, but it's a very different play experience. Even if you were to pop SSX3 into a Series X or whatever, now you can play it in beautiful 4K 60 and all that, but it's still, there's no option to remap the controls to the way that they originally were. But no, the GameCube version of Tricky just has a lot of severe performance issues that make it very strange in comparison to its siblings. Sorry.
I'm sorry. To give a quick background, what we're getting at, if you haven't played all the various different console releases, multi-platform of SSX back in the day, EA's solution to different controllers was just to basically lock you out from performing certain tricks. Like the GameCube's is the most cut down because you're missing another stick there, and also you only have one extra shoulder button. You only have one shoulder button, then you have 2 triggers. And then the Xbox is just wonky in a whole different way. And you basically you can choose between the platform of your choice or the one that performs the best, which, as Andrew said, is the Xbox, or having the complete experience as far as gameplay is concerned with the PS2 version. And I played a lot of SSX3 on my Series X, and the big issue there is that the boost button is also the same as the grind button, and if you press that like you're going to grind something but you land, so basically you're preemptively boosting for when you land, but it also registers as a grind and you're not grinding anything, you'll just bail. Every single time when you land, you will fall, and you have to change to these Pro Controls. But the issue with the Pro Controls work, but they change to jump. You then press the trigger. It turns everything else upside down.
Yeah, just kind of rewire your brain a little bit.
Yeah, and if you get used to it, the game works that way. But it's such a mess. I don't know. I feel like EA just they drove themselves crazy with it. It didn't need to be as complicated as they made it.
I didn't actually know about all this stuff because I only ever played the PlayStation 2 version, so it seems like I've been
you have the optimal experience there. Yeah, I think you can still have a good time with these games on Xbox or whatever, or on modern Xboxes even, but it's definitely compromised in some weirdly load-bearing ways, I guess.
It's also the kind of thing where if you're a pro player or whatever, I'm sure you'd be you'd feel those differences immensely. Whereas as a kid, having only played the GameCube version of Tricky, I didn't know that there were certain grabs I couldn't do or whatever. It was fine. I had a great time.
Yeah, I played fine. Yeah, I played through it on GameCube. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a cool game. I mean, it's like I'm saying, the music, everything about it is just going to feel good. I mean, the other one I can think of, we'll talk about, I assume shortly, is Amped 3, with its story mode especially, is the most wild video game for snowboarding I've ever played in my life. Andrew, you better thought that was absolutely insane.
Yeah. Before we get to AM3, just a little bit more on SSX. I want to know, because it seems like here we're all very like biased towards Tricky as our favorite. I also want to hear Bren talk about 2012 as well, because I know he put a lot of hours into that game.
Yeah.
But I remember back in the day, like when 3 came out, like everybody was like, this is it. Like, this is better than Tricky. And I played a lot of 3 in the last month, and I mean, it's a great game, obviously, but it waters down so many of the things that I enjoy about Tricky. Like, it gets rid of that, like, you know, having to actually like board to certain events and everything, and the really, I mean, going from mountain to mountain is just a menu system, and it just like kind of drains the life out of it in a way. I don't know.
Yeah.
I like being able to just like jump into a trick attack or whatever. The awesome character select screen that they made a really big deal out with Tricky, where it's like just like that spinning like whatever. It's just like it's kind of like, you know, they started with this arcade thing, and then they wanted to make it like more like kind of build out the world more, but they did it in a way that feels sort of hollow to me.
I think like the context of era like 3 released in was very much that point where like open world games were becoming more prevalent. Like people de facto would say Need for Speed Underground 2 was better than 1 because of the open world, for example, and that sort of thing, and games were opening up a bit more. And like I see 3 as this is going to sound confusing. SSX 3 is Burnout Paradise, and SSX Tricky is like Burnout 3 Takedown. So I think like as time has passed on, like people would probably say Tricky was the better of the two games more often than not. And I think with Burnout, a lot of people say the same now, where they're like, oh, Takedown's better than Paradise, that sort of thing. I think it's like SSX 3 was a good expansion on the system in terms of making it seem more open-ended, but like you're saying, Adam, maybe the kind of dilution of what made Tricky such a complete package in terms of just having that unique feel throughout the whole thing. Still think SSX 3 has a very lovely vibe to it in terms of like,
of
it
course.
feels very cool. Like, it's one of those games you turn it on and right away just like, and not that Tricky doesn't, but Tricky's more in your face like of that era, I feel like, whereas 3's has a bit more of a timeless kind of understatement to it. I know it's got a massive fucking city on one of the mountains and stuff, but obviously that came from Tricky as well, so
so grounded. I went on a journey with SSX for this podcast, because I never really got into these games before. I've picked them up and messed around with them, but I never really understood how to play them, because I think I always just instinctively wanted them to be like more Tony Hawk-y, I guess, and it took a while to figure out, like, no, this game is doing something very different, and providing the player with a lot of opportunity to do a lot of extremely cool things on its own terms, but I didn't have them at the time. I had Amped 1 and like 1080, and you know, so learning how to play these games has been a weird experience over the years, where just like every so often I'll pick one up for a little bit and like sort of start to come to terms with it, but then, you know, I put it down for a while and forget. So this was the first time that I really sat down with as much of the series as I could get my hands on and just like go through it and start to understand how this stuff works, and what the whole deal is with SSX. And yeah, it's interesting. I think Tricky is a lot. It is immediately doing the SSX thing, I guess, if that makes sense, whereas 3 asks you to put a lot more time in up front, because whereas the first game in Tricky, you have all these Fusion Frenzy characters for you to pick from, essentially, that all have their own stats and flourishes and everything, whereas 3 is wanting you to do the whole like, you know, career thing where like everyone starts out with all their stats zeroed out, and you know, put those points in on your own over time, etc. And yeah, the whole like the mountain as this one big open-ended space is really, really interesting from a like level design perspective. I think it's really fascinating to explore and find both the ways out of bounds that the game does and does not lead you towards, and seeing some little like a thing I enjoyed a lot about SSX3 is accidentally finding myself in a weird spot that feels like it should be out of bounds, and then I see a little like ramp or rail or pickup or something that like some level designer placed here because they knew someone would find their way out here, and I'm sure bazillions of people found that thing. But in that moment, it feels like you found something that, you know, was special and unique in some way. I don't know. Like, there are little things like that about SSX3 that I enjoy a lot. But generally speaking, yeah, it is a little bit less a concentrated dose of what makes this series special, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots of little things from going from Tricky to 3. Like, I like the announcer in Tricky more. DJ Atomica holds no...
Dude,
I don't care. The guy in Tricky is just... He's so smooth, you know? He's got a great voice.
When the revolution comes, DJ Atomica is first against the wall.
Yeah. There's that. Also, like, oh my god, they were on that, like, dynamic music kick, and it's actually awful in 3. Like, it results in... You know, 3's got a great soundtrack, but you'll never hear it unless you have like a full Uber meter or whatever, because at that point, like, you don't get the privilege of hearing the entire song with the vocals and all the instrument tracks unless you're like shredding things up. Otherwise, the game just gives you like, you know, bass.
Sounds like a skill issue, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, you're not wrong.
I don't think it occurred to me until now that SSX3 is a platinum game. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. So I don't know. Those are little things that just kept annoying me. But yeah.
But like, the interesting thing for me was what came after that, and trying to figure out like, okay, where is the actual line between 3 and On Tour? Because On Tour, for example, like on the PlayStation Portable, is kind of just 3, but with a bunch of like Napoleon Dynamite sketch art all over it, and that kind of like Guitar Hero-y aesthetic of the era of just everything being like a notebook.
Yeah. They really went for a different look there, and like SSX almost was doing the Need for Speed type thing, where they decided like, you know, we're gonna kind of go into like as the culture changed, like you can see like things went from like being like really like poppy like Y2K colors and stuff like that, and Fusion Frenzy characters, and then things started that more like black and white up, getting grungy. Then you get that more in like the mid 2000s, like indie rock stuff like that. And and like Def Leppard and shit. Like, it's really they were very strongly trying to define a very different look and feel for this thing, but I don't know, it does play really well on BSB. I didn't know that.
Despite having one set of shoulder buttons, no triggers, and one analog stick, I feel like they just kind of rewrote the entire control scheme and they made a very different video game. But like, damn, I can just sit on the couch and play SSX whenever. This is all right. This might be actually the greatest like life-improving moment of this whole endeavor for me. It's just the realization, like, oh, there's a good portable SSX game. I can just.
I'm embarrassed to say I had no idea, because I honestly, like, I get On Tour and Blur confused all the time. Blur was the one on the Wii.
Why wouldn't you?
With the balance board that I think I had.
There's a lot more stuff stacked on that, so I'm not pulling that out right now. But yes, that I also don't know what to do with Blur. I played that when it came out a little bit and was immediately turned off by the motion controls.
So strange. They're not implemented the way you'd imagine, just like kind of trying to neatly integrate into an already established good control scheme. They really went in on this idea that the motion controls were everything. So like I'm sure the stunts all have individual like motions and stuff with the Wii remote, if I recall. And how did you actually control the border itself? I'm trying to remember. Is that with the nunchuck? And it's the...
Yeah, it's with the stick, and then there's just a lot of, like, hold a button down and flick or wiggle. It doesn't really, detect a lot of, like, motion stuff in particular very well, because it's pre-motion plus. It's just relying on the gyro and the IR. Or the accelerometer. It doesn't even have a gyro.
And that's an issue, because they want you to do some fairly complex stuff for the tricks as well. Like, it's not just very simplistic movements. Even though that's all it can detect, it's trying to get you to do something that's a bit more kind of difficult. So Blur is definitely an odd one, but I remember getting that at launch as well. I think that was more due to the fact that when the Wii first came out, there was that clamour for regular games on it, as in not just like casual stuff. So like when a new Super Monkey Ball was on there, SSX.
I played through Red Steel, man. I hate myself.
But it's an interesting one.
It had cool bloom effects, as was the style of the time. But yeah, it's a very strange game that I've never been able to really get along with. I don't know. Do you think we just rip the Band-Aid off and roll into 2012, or should we work our way up?
I want to hear, because I know we have lots of differing opinions about that game.
Yeah, that was good.
Who else is
Somebody
an
talk,
advocate
please.
for 2012 then? I guess is it just me or
So I
It's not
like
just you.
it. I like it. I do feel like it has like a little bit of a Ridge Racer 6 thing going on. PSP. What I mean by that is like they're like, okay, SSX is hard to play well, so what if we made it impossible for you to fail? Like it feels a lot more responsive and like intuitive than the earlier games, but to the point where it's like you don't have to know what you're doing at all. It's honestly incredible how forgiving it is.
Yeah.
Except for the rewind thing, which you can get into, Brent. But I don't even really mind the whole like Deadly Descent thing. Like everyone's like, oh, it's so gritty, and it's like, I guess it's a little grittier, but it's really not. To me, it's not that much.
It was
of
a
difference
lot
from,
more
like,
grittier than
I don't know.
what
I
mean, like as in I don't think it is that gritty in the final release. Basically.
Oh
like,
yeah. No, the way that they originally pitched it definitely was.
Yeah.
But like, if you look at the final product compared to 3, you know, I don't think it's that big of a change. I think unless you're doing one of those like bombs down the mountain when like it's trying to kill you, it's actually a pretty like refreshing game.
Yeah.
But yeah, the problem with that is I was playing it on Series X, and at least the problem now, and they've done, unlike 3, they've done absolutely nothing to make that game look good on Series X. So it's 720p and just muddy and terrible looking, but cool for the time.
No, it's 4K 60, bro. What were you
not on
what were you
mine.
doing?
Not on mine. I don't know.
Did I make that up?
I'm sure
Am I
mine's just
completely
4K
hallucinating
60
right
as
now?
well.
What did I play this on? That's the other thing. We've been doing this for we've been prepping for this for like 2 months or something, and I barely
Maybe it's just
remember half this
upscaled.
stuff.
No, I could have sworn that it got
Yeah,
enhanced.
maybe, I don't know.
Well, someone else talk about it. I'm looking it up.
Yeah, you look that up. I hated this game when it came out. Because my prevailing memory of this game is being slammed with a constant stream of a lot of like just weird like EA server integration and tutorial window pop-ups and just constant like I don't know if did it even have microtransactions? I feel like I remember this game wanting more money out of me at the time, or something like that.
The credits were pretty stingy, but I don't think there was any actual way of purchasing them. But like in terms of earning them, I do
maybe.
remember it. Like, but maybe there was a way, but I don't think I ever found it. If so,
Yeah, so like the only version of this that I had was through PlayStation Plus on the PS3. So I fired up my PS3, went to launch the game, and it was like, oh, not anymore, buddy. You can't. No. So I went and bought a 360 copy and put it in my Xbox. But I don't know what was going on 10 years ago or whatever, because I had an absolute blast playing this thing this time around. I had so much fun. It is very easygoing and it goes down really smoothly. And yes, I see what you're talking about with the like skill floor being lowered even more. But I got the impression, at least. I mean, this is something I would have to spend a lot more time with or talk to someone who has to get a clear idea. But like, I got the impression that the skill ceiling is also a lot higher.
Yeah, I could definitely see that.
It seems like you can also get a lot weirder with it. And the infinite freefall tutorial was weirdly really good at teaching me like, oh, this is how this game works. Okay, got it.
Very early on about the floor is gold for every event. Like, you are expected to be first in every event in terms of like the actual career and campaign mode, but like you're saying, Andrew, I think like where this game for me really flourished is this idea that the mechanics are so over the top and ridiculous that it can really get absolutely insane. Like when you're on those high score runs, for example, you need to be hitting like 200 to 250 times combos, and basically you need to be hitting every guardrail and that sort of thing. So it becomes a game where being good at the game is being able to play it on autopilot almost, in terms of like knowing exactly what you want to do with the border, and like physics and stuff just don't play into it. So it's very interesting because a lot of people look at the aesthetics and just assume that it's a lot more grounded than what Tricky was trying to do and what Free was trying to do. But I think from a mechanics perspective, this game by far has the most freedom for me in terms of what you can actually do in this game once you understand how the trick mechanics and stuff work. Is probably for me the peak of the series. And I know some people might say that's sacrilege, but I don't know, I just feel as if even the actual track designs or drop designs outside of the Deadly Descent stuff, just the general kind of trick layouts and stuff are absolutely wild, like the Himalayas with the kind of mini Great Wall of China and stuff, and there's just like there are so many nice little nuances to the actual kind of hill designs that make it really fun to put together. And the racing isn't really that fantastic, but in SSX it's never really been the main appeal. I would say it's always really been the trick runs, and this game really leans into that very heavily, and I think the dynamic soundtrack implementation is a lot better than Freeze as well. And I don't care what anybody says, I absolutely love that dubstep Tricky mix because it's just so silly. It's absolutely absurd, and like that's why I think it's a really interesting game, because when they first showed it off as SSX Deadly Descent, that's all it was about, and it was coming across as some sort of Call of Snowboarding Duty type thing.
I don't even know what you're talking about. This sounds
Oh,
wild.
Andrew, you have to see this. The reveal trailer, it's crazy. The entire game was basically going to be the Deadly Descent piece.
No, insane. This is the first I've heard of any of this. I did zero research. I just played a lot of mid-video games.
Oh, mate, look up the SSX Deadly Descent trailer and you'll see what it is. But basically, the initial plan for this was to try and lean into this kind of dark and gritty, like kind of Battlefield-like thing, but for snowboarding, like Dark Summit, funnily enough, to reference another game. And the reception was that bad. I even remember a particular Kotaku article at the time, it was like blowing up about it, that they did a total 180 and shifted entirely in a different direction, which is why I think it's crazy to think what we got in the end.
Yeah, sorry, I'm looking at this debut trailer and just... What?
Yeah, exactly. It's crazy.
Posted by what is now the Madden NFL YouTube account.
Yeah, I noticed that earlier as well.
Oh, that's gross. I just wanted to say
did a Sonic the Hedgehog, the movie. That's basically what happened here, but for SSX.
So while you guys have been talking, I looked into this, and I am right. SSX 3 has all of those enhancements on Xbox.
All right,
2012 does not. Because I was
not even 4K.
Maybe.
No, it's 720p 30.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Jeez.
Maybe I just ran it in. No. I might have run that on my 360 into the RetroTink 4K before.
You know, that might do it.
I don't remember.
Yeah, that would work.
I don't know.
I'm sure it could be.
I mean, that'll be a different image.
I'm sure it could be a very, very pretty game. You know, with just running it in 4K, it must look phenomenal. You know.
Yeah.
But
I love like
I mean, it's just
glow in the dark equipment and stuff that you can get as well. So like the game is a really strange equipment mechanic where after every event it refreshes like a random shop. I think it's like a 15-minute window for all of them, so sort of like a beta version of every FOMO game now, where it was like before you went into an event there'd be random items for sale and they had different stats and all that sort of stuff, but there was like the equivalent of stealth cars in Gran Turismo. There was like glow in the dark stuff that you could get equipment wise. So if you put all of that together and did like a Deadly Descent at like midnight, it just it was so cool. Like all those spinning and tricks with the light show going on. It's a game that can look really nice. I think that is true. And yeah, I really like this one as well for the online stuff. Obviously, I can see why it wouldn't be for everybody, but in terms of like asynchronous multiplayer, it was perfect. Like just that ability to go into any event, whether that be in the main career or the dedicated, I can't remember what the EA name for it was in SSX, Freeride or something, maybe. RiderNet, sorry, yeah. And just like automatically doing that kind of Dirt Rally 2.0 leaderboard thing of categorising score bands, awarding the best players for how well they performed, earning certain medals off of that, having to wager higher amounts of your credits to enter higher paying events. There was like a really cool kind of career structure there for a game I think that did sell pretty well, so it did work relatively okay at the time. and even on the 360 version now, if you play it through the Xbox, you'll see like 7 or 8 people maybe per event. But it was really cool how they just blended it directly into the game, and I think at the time that was pretty pioneering, to be honest. I don't think it was that popular, the whole asynchronous multiplayer thing at the time.
I mean, they were really pushing it with Criterion was really pushing it with Hot Pursuit and Most Wanted. They had the auto log, and it was good there. But I think my favorite implementation of it was actually
maybe that's what was
SSX
back in the day.
It was just really seamless in SSX.
Because I did the same thing with Hot Pursuit. I returned to that game.
They did actually.
It was for whatever reason that just like, I think it was also because I didn't have like Xbox Live at the time, so I was like, I can't use any of this. Why is it? Whatever. Anyway, I was looking up to see if there were any publicly available sales figures for this game, because I know, like, I mean, SSX was how we got the whole EA big branding in the first place. Yeah. Back in 2000, and this was kind of, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, we haven't really seen anything actually official since this, right? Like,
Got Shocks. Isn't EA big?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, well, yeah, there were a lot of EA big games that sold extremely well.
And NFL Street, all the Street games.
FIFA Street as well.
Yeah, I mean, even FIFA Street was even big here. Like, those games sold extremely well.
Home Court. We all remember Home Court.
What is it? That version of Sledstorm. That game actually is pretty rad. But yeah, I'm seeing a few different, like, secondhand sources that are saying it was around 450 to 500,000 copies, which is a lot. Maybe not a lot for EA Sports in 2012. I could see why they would maybe want to, divert that funding over to things that are maybe making bigger margins or whatever. But, like, man, it's been 12 years now since this game came out, and like this franchise has just been floating in the water.
We'll see what Skate does, and I mean, if Skate's huge, then maybe SSX has a chance of coming back as well. But I think unless we want this to just be the SSX show, we gotta move on. There's a lot to talk about.
There is. Yeah.
There's so much.
Man.
There's so very much.
Let's talk about something we don't like. That would be fun. As a quick aside, Andrew said he had a pile of snowboarding kusoge.
I don't know what you're talking about. This is fine. This is fine.
As he lifts this up to camera for those of you listening to this podcast, and amazingly, not one game fell over. There was a tower there.
There's a lot of Xbox games there as well.
There's a lot of years bartending.
Cases.
Yeah, a lot of green cases here. Oh man, yeah. What are we? Adam, do you want to talk about the Sega Saturn?
Yeah. All right. So I'll talk about that game. So when we started talking about this, I was like, I need to play Steep Slope Sliders because it's this weird cave Saturn snowboarding game that I would keep seeing in stores and never buy. And, I didn't buy it now because I think it's actually pretty expensive now, like every Saturn game. But I just emulated it and it was great. Really weird game. This game is
very strange.
Cursed. It's I encourage you to look up footage of it maybe if you can as we're talking about it, because like it's hard to convey. It's just like unsettling. Like first it starts off, there's no music in the menu. It's just silent.
Yeah, it feels super unfinished.
Yeah, it's just silent, and then you go into one of the events or on one of the mountains, and like the gameplay feeling's actually pretty good for the time anyway.
Yeah.
Like I mean, we'll talk about Cool Boars eventually. I cannot stand those early Cool Boars games, and this one feels good. It's definitely like figuring things out. Like, one thing that jumped out at me immediately is that the angle of your board does not actually correspond to the direction you go in. So you can like you can go down the mountain straight, but have your board kind of at like maybe like a 20-degree angle or something like that.
Rotate with the shoulder buttons.
You rotate with the shoulder buttons, and that's the thing. Like this and Cool Boarders are very different because Cool Boarders is basically taking like the sort of inputs that would be from in a fighting game and like converting those to tricks that you do in midair, and it's just like
it's kind of the twisted metal like school of Just like enter in a weird button combo really quick, like you're turning on the blood code on Mortal Kombat or whatever.
My issue with Cool Borders though with that is that like for me like the button combos never actually correspond like kinesthetically to anything you're doing. They just feel extremely arbitrary. Whereas like in Steep Slope Sliders, it's not combo. I mean, there are combos, but it's not combo based like that because it's fully analog. Like
it's all physics.
Yeah, you move with the shoulder buttons, and then the flips are their own thing. The grabs are each a different one of the 6 face buttons or whatever. And like, it actually feels pretty good. But it's just a very silent, solitary game with weird menus, a good but also very weird soundtrack, and the most cursed sound test in the history of video games. I think maybe even worse than the one in Sonic Spinball.
Really?
It's bad. I mean, first of all, like it is. I'm not saying this to be hyperbolic. I do not have epilepsy, thankfully, but I think if I did, this would have triggered something because it's like it has like it has like a visualizer and it's really intense.
Oh, I didn't even realize that.
Oh, you didn't see?
I know
that?
You said it had a cursed sound test, but I forgot to go in and check it out.
Yeah, you can go in and basically like there's like I don't know, maybe like 7 or 8 different sort of like different 3D visualizers.
It's like Jeff Minter visualizers, like on what are you talking?
I don't know how to explain it.
I gotta see what I can.
It's
that's fine.
It's basically like there's a camera that's moving around in like this box, these 4 walls, these 6 walls or whatever, and you can control the speed at which the camera sort of gyrates, but you can't completely make it still. And the textures are just very intense, but then like as you change, like that's like the first one. When you get to like the last sound test, it's like multicolored. It's layering things on top of other things with like VDP2 and VDP1, and I'm just like it hurts. It just really hurts, which is a shame because the music is fantastic. But yeah, it's oh my god, it's such an odd game.
It is, and when Adam said cave earlier, he didn't mean like you're snowboarding through caves. I mean, those are there, but like this is cave as in formerly Toa Plan cave, like Dodonpachi cave. One of my favorite developers. They'll occasionally do weird things like racing games and stuff, but I don't think I even remembered or was aware this existed until Adam brought it up. But it definitely feels like something from like creepypasta or whatever. It's a haunted disc.
That's what I was going to say. That's what it sounds like based on Adam's description. Anyway, I don't even know if I want to play it now.
You got secret characters like boy, and baby,
skinhead, and it's pretty. This thing was translated in about 11 minutes, I think. It's something. I don't know if it's using. Would inverse kinematics even be the right word here, Paul? I don't know. What looks like IK is very impressive here, but.
Wow. Did it come out? So it came out in the US?
It did, yeah. It's Japanese developed. Wow. I don't know if it came out in...
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, it looks like that was PAL as well.
You got PAL release as well, wow.
Yeah.
But, also, there was an arcade version that ran on that STV board that was the Saturn as an arcade board, so I don't even know how you control that.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
I've seen the logo actually, and I'm sure I've seen the logo in an arcade before. It was probably one of those weird arcade machines with the actual, like, snowboard as the input. I'm guessing, like, you stand on it and it would have like guardrails. Yeah. I'm gonna go check because I've just seen it and I recognise it somehow.
I'm trying to think of what because I know what you're talking about. I've used one of those, but it was a long time ago, and I keep wanting to say 720, but that's a different older game.
Oh, so I had I'd forgotten. I had read this at some point. So the face buttons. I mean, because the Saturn's controller is basically an arcade stick configuration. The face buttons were the same as just like the classic like JAMA configuration. So in arcades, you just use like those 6 buttons for tricks as well.
Interesting.
So, yeah.
Japanese box art's cool.
Yeah, the thing is about that game, like all of the geometry around you is warping in ways that are, non-Euclidean, and eldritch in nature, some kind of cosmic horror is happening because it's a Saturn game that's moving at speed. So the world around you cannot make sense visually. It's impossible. But I remember the just like physics and momentum and like the way that your like player character's weight carries forward down the slope, feeling really weirdly intuitive once I got a hang of it, I guess, and the importance of constantly rotating your entire character manually.
What about the warning screen at the start of the game, by the way? I was just watching a YouTube video and just seen, caution, their cool snowboarding technique is the fruit of their labour. It's extremely dangerous. Don't try to imitate them or you will die.
I don't.
Not even leaving it open to interpretation. Just, you will die. That's a direct threat from Cave.
Yeah, I might have missed that in my playthrough.
Yeah.
I mean, playthrough is playing it lightly. I did play a lot of this game. I mean, probably more than anyone recently in the world. But there's also not that much
in the background as well. Sorry, just
no.
creeped out by this game.
There's also not that much to it. I mean, it's mostly just weird vibes and actually like a really cool, like if you see like the start screen and like the menus, like it has a really cool visual design to it, but it almost reminds me with that like you will die caution message. Like remember Thrill Drive? It kind of has that going for it. Like it's trying to scare you into playing this game, which is very 90s.
There's also like in the loading screen, there's like a Star of David like on the loading screen.
Yeah, I'm not sure what's going on here.
Guys, what are we talking about here? Like, it's a very
snowboarding.
strange game.
Yeah, it's a weird just conglomeration of aesthetics and ideas. It's very, very odd.
I'd so much rather play it to Cool Borders, though. I'm just saying, those early ones.
Yeah,
anyway.
no, it's. Yeah. I would also absolutely play this over any Cool Border, any day of the week.
Yeah.
I don't even hate Cool Borders or anything. I'm just like, it's just it just doesn't do anything for me. I don't know.
I gotta be honest. Like, I mean, we may as well talk about Cool Borders now. So when I was a kid, I remember we rented it. I liked it. Because you're a kid, whatever, you play the games that are in front of you. But going back to it now, I'm just like, God, like, I don't like anything about this game. It doesn't move well. It doesn't look good. The music sucks. Like everything just sucks except for the menus are kind of cool because they basically there's a guy hanging out next to a trash fire or whatever, and there's a lot of like cool like comic book art in like the character select, but that's it. I really do not like. One or two, at least the Web Systems games on the PS1, because we'll get into, I think, Andrew, you played the 989 ones, because then Cool Borders becomes something else. But yeah, those first two games are rough in my opinion.
I think I've ever played those first two.
Yeah.
I got them here.
Yep.
Oh,
nice.
And
love it.
I mean, I played it when it came out in 90. I looked earlier, it was 96. I played it when it came out in 96 and didn't really like it then. I mean, it's 28 years old now, right? That's a long time ago. But even then, it wasn't great. I don't think really. It didn't feel quite right, and it was really, really hard to play. Really hard to do
very
tricks.
Difficult. That's what I always remember about it. Especially as a youngster, obviously.
Yeah.
That's right, yeah, and I fell off it pretty quick and then going back to it now, and I think it's actually out on PS5 now as a classic game. You can download it from PS Plus, which is cool. I haven't tried it because I didn't, when I bought it on PlayStation recently, obviously, I didn't like it, and two, it felt a bit better. There's a bit more to the game. It had half pipe and stuff to do there's more to do in the game and more courses and stuff, but yeah. I had the weird commentary with the guy. I don't know if it's just exclusive to the Japanese one. I don't remember the PAL one at all. That's what I played it on originally, but Japanese voiceover and stuff and commentary, it was bizarre game.
I think the PAL soundtrack's better than the US one as well. I'm sure we get a different soundtrack.
Right. That wouldn't be surprising.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's like a mix of
without looking at either of them, I believe you.
I think. Yeah, I think it was like a mix of breakbeat and jazz, if I remember correctly. As every PAL game tended to be at that time period. Yeah, Cool Borders was like absolute demo disc fodder, I think that's what I'd describe it as. It was one of those games that always popped up, even if it was like a year from its release. It'd be included on those magazine demo discs like every time.
Cool Borders was less designed and developed and more just kind of spawned as somewhere in the PlayStation underground.
Yeah,
right.
Exactly. PlayStation obviously feel fondly about it because I don't think its release on PS5 is the only time it's been re-released on the.
It's
the
pretty much a
stuff.
staple. Like every
put it out
single
on
time.
the Mini?
Yeah, every time Sony does some kind of like when they first did the PS1 classics on the PS3, and I think it was on the Mini as well. I think it's usually like the first game though. I don't know. The Sony always makes some weird choices. Because I think like if you're choosing between at least those two original games, like why wouldn't you choose two? Like it's. I mean, I'm comparing footage of these games and like, hey, at least in Cool Boars 2, like the rider is animated. Like their arms move when they, careen from side to side.
Yeah.
Like,
And it's called Killing Session. As
oh
well.
yes.
Ooh.
At least in Japan, Killing Session.
That is important.
Hilarious.
What was this
I mean-
like obsession with like death and snowboarding?
Yeah.
Hey man, it's dangerous.
I mean, it is, but
I went snowboarding once and destroyed my knee. That was it. That was my whole career.
I guess that was like its defining feature. Like skateboarding was Tony Hawk in a way. Like so, there was an immediate recognition for what skateboarding was associated with. Whereas, like, I guess snowboarding just chose death.
Dying?
So-
Yeah, just
choose death.
skateboarding has the Birdman. Snowboarding has departing this mortal coil.
Man.
Yeah, I don't know. I have 3 and 4. I've messed with them a little bit. I don't really have anything to say about them. They exist. I'm not particularly interested in them. I played a lot of Burn on the Dreamcast, which I guess was ripping writers here.
So let's explain for all our listeners who don't know about the history of Cool Boarders. So those first 2 games were developed by Web Systems, and then starting with Cool Boarders 3, Sony, like the 989 published games started, and they were developed by a team called Idle Minds in the US, and then they did 3, 4, and 2001, and 2001 was on both PlayStation 1 and PlayStation 2.
I have a PS2 copy of it here. I couldn't get it to boot, though.
Yeah. And then at the same time, Web Systems, who made those first 2 games, made Cool Boarders Burn in Japan for the Dreamcast, which was released in the US as Rippin' Riders, and what was the name in the PAL region? You guys remember? I can't remember off the top of my head.
I don't know. I had a Japanese Dreamcast, so that's what I had. I can't remember.
I'll look it up real quick. But
Paul,
yeah,
sorry, I don't know. I'm too cool.
Yeah.
no, they do.
Sorry.
Snow Surfers on Dreamcast.
That's pretty good. That's a good
Cool
name.
name.
Okay.
Now, Burn / Rippin' Riders / Snow Surfers, that one's actually okay. It's I enjoyed it more than the first 2 games, and you kind of move in a more organic way. It's not terrible.
Had a good frame rate.
Good frame rate.
Most of the time, yeah.
Decent soundtrack.
Yeah.
I think
Sometimes.
that's what I meant to ask
Yeah.
about this. I think this might be running double buffered, because I think it's usually 60, and then it will just drop directly to 30 when it is struggling, and then it'll pop back up. There doesn't seem to be a lot of middle ground.
Yeah, it is
Right.
messy.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
usually 60 though. It looks nice and smooth. It feels really good on the Dreamcast's weird little magnetic Hall effect analog stick.
It's really funny because it has like 6 fictional characters or whatever that all like look rather stylized, kind of have sort of an anime look to them, even the 3D models, and then it has one real rider that is not named, and he's real because the texture of his face is
Photographed
literally
his
a
face.
photograph of his face, and he looks different than everyone else, and he's wearing like real clothes as opposed to like cool street anime clothes, and I don't know his name. I don't think they ever tell you his name in the game.
Jimmy, I think.
Oh,
in
do
like
they?
an opening cutscene?
Do they
something
call
like that?
him Jimmy? Maybe.
Did I make that up?
Maybe if I watched the intro, they would have told me.
Yeah, I've got it looping in another window here. And there's a lot of that. Is that it for Cool Boarders? Did that also just fade away by that point?
Fade away in what
After
sense?
2001, I mean?
Not
like,
in our hearts.
Was there, was there anything released after Burn in 2001?
Well,
I mean,
yeah.
that had
So
that
we
name on it?
so we have not addressed the last one, which was particularly interesting to me. Code Alien.
Oh, yes, right.
So Code Alien, I don't know whether that came before Burn or Burn came first, but Code Alien I think was a launch title for the PS2. So the Dreamcast still would have been on its like last legs at that point. And that one's weird because it shares. I mean, that's its own game. It's not a PS2 port of Burn. It's its own thing. That one has a really cool art style. That one has kind of like a Jet Set Radio Future thing going on a little bit. Not very interesting to play. Not broken, at least there's that. But it's the environments are very bland.
Seems very gray.
That's what's weird. Like the menus are really cool because the menu system is like you're flipping these pages of a magazine, and it has all this has all these like actual like legit snowboarding like VHS tapes and DVDs and stuff like that from like real riders and companies. There's like a ton of brands in this game, and like the snowboarding magazine, like they'll show pages of like covers from these magazines with like taken by like actual like snowboarding photographers in Japan. Like it has the culture down so well, but it's just boring to play.
Strange. So, did it have anything to do with aliens in it?
No, I could not figure out why they called it Code Alien. That was very confusing to me. Very cool logo though.
Snow surfing with the alien or anything?
Yeah, cool.
That's the best I've got, and that's terrible.
Oh, also there is a Suicidal Tendencies exclusive video and if you go on the options screen, it's like go here to watch a Suicidal Tendencies music video, and it's bad. But yeah,
that's fantastic.
I was just checking if Code Alien was like a snowboarding term. That is not. So I don't know where that comes from.
Yeah, and then Cool Boars just went away like all the snowboarding games, but
everything ends eventually, Adam. Entropy comes for us all.
All right, where we go from here?
Yeah, that's a good point. Are we going to go even more niche?
So I've got one here called Evolution Snowboarding,
yes,
which is
please
made by Konami on PlayStation 2, which I'd never actually heard of until we started discussing doing the snowboarding podcast. It's this really interesting game where it's kind of it feels like a sort of Running Man-esque, like it's in the future with all these really abstract levels where you it's like a sanctioned futuristic Mad Max style future where you're doing all these events, and there's a story at the start. It's all in Japanese, so I have no idea what's going on there. But it's all like comic book panels and text and slides and stuff over it. It's really cool. And rock music, sort of metal as you're playing down the thing. And you're snowboarding, obviously, and you have a basic trick system, which is quite cool. But you can also punch and kick. And you can pick up weapons like barbed-wired baseball bats and whips and stuff, and hit people and knock them off when you're racing down the track. So it's kind of like this weird mix of Road Rash and SSX into this game. It's really strange. And then you have boss fights, and the first guy you fight in the game, which I did earlier, he's got a chainsaw which is also electrified as well. He's trying to take you out as you're racing down. And it's a really strange setup. Yeah, you've got missions where you're collecting these keys, which don't seem to do anything other than the requirement for the mission. Racing, time attack, beating people up. Yeah, so it's a really interesting game. And it says go back to the danger death thing. It has danger written all over it, all over the cover and stuff. But
this looks so
interesting.
Weird. What's really strange to me is this is a Konami developed and published game that looks like Midway made it in like 2001.
It reminds me of Downhill Domination, which is like mountain biking Road Rash.
It's like the secret like snowboarding version of Arctic Thunder that like they never released.
It's interesting because I always overlooked this because I assumed it was related to Evolution Skateboarding, a very sort of okay video game that I think is really only survived in any kind of public consciousness this long because of its inclusion in Metal Gear Solid 2 Substance. Because Snake on a skateboard is really funny just inherently. But yeah, I didn't know that the snowboarding game that they put that name on was a wildly different and completely bonkers thing. I want to track this down and play this very badly.
The player in the footage I'm watching on YouTube just never stops swinging the chain, just constantly,
Why would you?
like back and forth over and over again.
Right. I'm guessing that player was hammering the controller for that one. Yeah, it's got all like real brands on it. None in it I can name off right now. But there was ones I definitely recognised in there from magazines or whatever back in the day. But yeah, it's lots of characters. You unlock characters as you go. It's got cutscenes, boss fights. Like I said,
There's that
it's
electrified
really
chainsaw.
interesting.
That is a large man.
He's massive compared to you when you're playing. Yes,
That is concerning.
Apparently it's a
That boy too big.
Where he comes from, I don't know what he's for. He's just very angry at you for some reason.
He sure is. This is why video games were invented. This is incredible.
Yeah, and the intro to it is kind of, you know, at the start of Metal Gear Solid when you're going through the tank, the bit of the tanker,
Yeah.
and the credits are coming up slowly. It has that sequence in it. I don't know whether they just ripped it off from Kojima. Obviously, it's Konami game, so,
so good.
it just totally reminded me.
This
It's like
rules.
there's It's pretty strange.
Apparently there's an Evolution skateboarding as well, and this was a sequel to that, so there must be a skateboarding equivalent.
Oh,
Which
yeah,
is
so
interesting.
So that's what I meant. Is Evolution Skateboarding has none of this. It's just
it doesn't have any. Sorry, yeah. For some reason, I
Yeah,
thought you
it's-
maybe were talking about like a
Oh no,
similar
sorry.
series,
It's
but
just,
that's literally that's very odd.
yeah.
Oh, God. So looking in the menu, you've got shoguns. This guy's got a massive samurai sword, hammers, all sorts of stuff. I think I might have to get a boomerang thing.
Is that guy Australian probably or?
I have to keep. Well,
Yeah, we're operating on the Street Fighter and
Yeah.
Punch Out versions of just
yeah.
Just stumbled
cartoon
upon
stereotypes.
Evolution
It's very
skateboarding
strange.
footage real quick, and the description starts with, it includes several popular skateboarders such as Rick McCrank, which I've never heard of before in my life, and
It's a name.
just
It's a good
immediately
name.
laughed at. It's pretty good.
Yeah, that was a very pleasant surprise.
Yeah.
For sure.
It's an interesting one.
I need to try that one. And once again, it's another snowboarding game obsessed with death. So
Yeah, there you go. Here's one that's
Sure.
not. I want to drop my other piece of Saturn Kisoge here really quick. Our friends over at TV Tokyo have dropped Zap snowboarding tricks in 1997 and again in 1998. I don't know if they changed on that one. I don't have that. I found this on my friend Vink runs an export shop out of Japan over somewhere around Fukuoka, but he just finds games and puts them up there, and then you buy them and he ships them to you. It's quite simple. Anyway, one day this showed up on his store, and I needed to know what it was, so I got it, and it's weird. I don't know. It's a. There's not a lot to say. It's a budget snowboarding game on the Saturn that makes steep slope sliders look a lot better in comparison. And maybe I was so keen on that because I played this first, and that set my expectations.
I mean,
this does
Elsewhere?
look low budget.
it looks
Like-
it looks like Cool Borders with a worse frame rate. I mean, that's what I'm getting from it.
Yeah, it's a Pony Canyon
How's that
release. It
possible?
was developed by Atelier Double, who looks like was mostly just doing a lot of other ports of licensed stuff for a while and then disappeared shortly after. Yeah, I don't have a lot to say about this other than it
this
exists.
one
I
looks
played
very
it. Here we are.
simple.
Yeah,
Like-
I think it's good that there are some things in this giant stack here that I just don't have a lot to say about, so we can move on.
Yeah, I'm just watching the gameplay, and like usually I'm like, oh, I'd like to try that for X reason, and this
You're good.
certainly looks like a video game of all time. So
Yeah, I honestly don't know if I'd go that far. But
well, I'm happy to talk about another game next.
please do.
I think
I'm just
I think we should talk about 1080.
well,
Right? That's the other big one, right? But before we get to Amped, 1080.
1080 snowboard. You know, I've never actually played 1080, and that is something I
done
probably
a
should have
1080?
played before this. I've played the 1080 creator's new game on the MetaQuest, but I've not played 1080 itself. So yeah, you guys can talk about 1080. I'm curious to see why I should try it because everybody says it's amazing. I really should have given this a
you're
go
fine.
prior to the podcast.
It's no wave race. It's good.
Oh,
But
so
it-
okay, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I love Wave Race 64. I'm just comparing this to that because it's back when Nintendo used to
I mean, how
make
could you?
racing adjacent games.
Yeah.
And 1080 doesn't like, it feels good, but it doesn't feel as like satisfying as like Wave Race with the waves and stuff like that. And you know, it really can't. The issue with 1080 I've always had is just I can't land anything in that game. I don't know how you do it. I have no idea.
Is it just a button you have to hold down? Like, I played so much of this as a kid when it was new, and going back to it now, it's like, yeah, I remember the character select music.
Yeah, of course. It's a great
there being
screen.
A health bar.
Yeah, great character
select
like screen.
Yeah, it's very strange.
And that's the thing, because there's a health bar, like the fact that you can't land anything is even more punishing. And this game's really hard. It's really, really hard.
Very difficult, which I can appreciate. I just don't understand how to play it.
Right, but if it's really hard,
like
you
a
feel
game
like you have zero recourse, and it just feels like, why would I keep playing this?
Yeah, exactly. I just give up pretty quick. But
looks
I
great.
want to understand 1080.
You know, it's the N64 doing the thing it could do, at least when Nintendo was, at the helm.
I'll give it one thing compared to a lot of its contemporaries here we've talked about. The geometry is holding together.
Yes.
It's not all over the place, creating nightmares of cosmic horror.
Yeah.
It's because the blur of the N64 output is just masking it.
I thought 1080 was on the GameCube. No, was there
So
sequel?
That's the sequel.
Right.
Yeah.
Which
Now we're in Adam's sicko corner.
yeah, so this might be a hot take. 1080 Avalanche, I think, is the best snowboarding game ever made. It is phenomenal.
Big
So
words.
criminally underrated. Everyone always says criminally before underrated, but I feel like it's warranted here. I think too, like with this game, there's a chip on my shoulder because like it came out the same season that SSX3 did in 2003, and while everybody was like fawning over SSX3, I just fell in love with this game. Like, and it's aged so well. Like I said this to Andrew when we were playing Amped on Xbox on Insignia the other day. That like, when you think of like those like GameCube games that were like, this could have been like a next generation thing, like F-Zero GX, for example, just like that barrage of like visual information, everything is so crisp. You play in progressive scan, it looks freaking incredible. 1080 Avalanche, I feel like does the same thing for a snowboarding game. Like the controls are super tight, it looks pristine. I know a lot of people probably won't like the ass rock post grunge soundtrack, but I only listened to that kind of music when I was 10 years old, and it has like a really, really special place in my heart. The track design's great. The only like annoying thing is that like they were really into this thing where if like you don't land the trick exactly right, you have to do this like, waggle the
wiggle the
control stick around. But it's really like it's way more it's endlessly more forgiving than the first game, and just the sense of speed. Nintendo on both the original 1080 and on Avalanche, they really paid attention to like the way that the rider moves, and also even just like they worked in like some rudimentary like cloth rippling when you're going really fast, and that just enhances the sense of motion. I love
anime
this game.
speed lines around the edges of the screen too.
It's got that too, and then I absolutely love this game.
It's really good, man. I spent a lot more time with it after we talked while playing Amped, and obviously it's a very different feel, so it took me a second to like reconfigure, but this game just feels great, man. I don't know, it's a different take on what snowboarding can feel like in a video game, but it just feels so fast and intense and solid. I don't know. You're not flying up in the air a lot. It's a lot of just being very, very aware of your immediate surroundings and winding between a lot of obstacles, some of which are moving. Like it'll send you through factories and stuff where there's just, I don't know, big generic factory machinery moving around like you're in a old cartoon or something. But it's I don't know. It seems very much more focused on the kind of micro scope around you, as opposed to like taking on the whole mountain is a big thing. Like you have to preload your jumps with a specific timing window and all that stuff. Like
it's just more of a racing game too. It's not really. I mean, there is like kind of like a trick attack kind of thing going on if you want that, but like to progress through the game, it's mostly racing. And it's like, it's very like, yeah, like fast corridor, like basically the style of snowboarding game that like you could say Cool Boars invented, but like with actually good track design, like to the extreme.
Yeah.
Which is why, like, when we talk about Amped, like, Amped is very good, but for what I'm looking for, like, this is more it. It's more linear. It's more about speed. It's more about, you know, I like racing games, so it makes sense. It's more about the control when you're not in the air, and it does that really, really well.
I think that's the thing. Snowboarding games have always kind of struggled at, I would say, like the actual racing element. Because most do pivot towards the tricks being the main focus, I feel like. And I guess it is a lot harder to make a kind of half-decent, grounded snowboarding game because you're always going downhill. So it's not like a normal racing game where you can kind of obviously add different variations in there and that sort of thing. So it is actually pretty intriguing hearing that description, that it's more focused on the actual racing element, because I don't think of any of the snowboarding games that I actually enjoy the racing is ever really the part I'm like, that's why I'm playing it. It is always more to do with that kind of trick side of things, but once again, that might just be personal preference more than anything.
Yeah.
Could be. I mean, there is still crazy stuff. Like, they do have you outrunning avalanches and stuff. It is still ridiculous at times.
It definitely borrows a little bit more from, like, the SSX school of snowboarding games, and, like, you know, when the first 1080 came out, which was obviously before then, it was more realistic feeling, and this is like when you do a bunch of tricks, like, then your character glows, and, you know, there's all this sort of dynamic core stuff that happens. Also worth shouting out, this was NST joints, which also behind Ridge Racer 64, which is actually a good game. Maybe not a great Ridge Racer game, but a good game.
I seem to remember it having a bit of, it changed developer at one point. It got heavily delayed.
Yeah,
because I was really into the GameCube when it came out. I seem to remember it took a long time before that game came out, and I'm pretty sure, I don't know whether it changed developer or something. I think
it was supposed to be a left field productions game, and then, like, I'm reading according to Wikipedia anyway, their contract ended, so then NST took what they had and took it the rest of the way, because elsewhere it was called Silverstorm.
Yes.
Yeah, in Japan. So, and of course the Wave Race.
Cool box art, Japanese.
Yeah, really cool
incredible box art. Yeah.
And Japanese Wave
Race
Storm, which is a great game.
Yeah, I was hoping my copy of Silverstorm would be here before we recorded, so I could also put that on the stack. But alas, just have to imagine.
Oh, you can snowboard on a penguin, I see.
Oh, there's some really wild special characters.
As one does.
Like there is a skeleton and.
NES controller as well.
Yeah, there's an NES controller.
Okay.
I might need to spend some more time with this game.
It's really good. It's really, really good.
It's a bit of a tangent, but like just looking at this game, it really makes me miss when Nintendo made that sort of thing instead of just woohoo child games and like maybe every so often an experimental type game, whereas I think in that GameCube era, even to an extent in the Wii, I felt like there was some like really good stuff from Nintendo that was a bit out there. Obviously on the DS they were hitting out home runs all the time with stuff like Elite Beat Agents and that sort of thing that were just like totally out of left field. But yeah, just looking at that game there, I'm like, Nintendo would never make that now. Like, and that's a bit sad to think about it that way. So it's.
Well, they can always make really good physics-based stuff, and they just chose not to in recent generations.
And they don't make small games either now. Like this, when they had the separation of the handheld games and the console games, they don't make those handheld games now, even though the Switch is perfectly portable.
Yeah,
like they do some stuff. They remade Trace Memory, you know, just a few months back that came out. It's like there's some things like that, but not like this. They're not making arcade games, you know.
They do make surprising stuff as well, because like there's a sequel to Endless Ocean out like next month as well, which was like a diving game on the Wii. Yeah, it's out next month, and they just announced it in January, I think it was, and they're just like, yep, here's a full new game. So
awesome.
So it's possible that they can still do it when they choose to.
That's fantastic.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it either, because it's one of those things, you go into those Nintendo Directs and you expect to see it, and then like just one more thing was a new Endless Ocean game, and it's just like, how does that even, like, how does that come about? So maybe I'm being a bit harsh, and 1080 could return out of nowhere. It's,
I mean, that would
Wave
be great.
Race.
Wave
I was
Race.
gonna say, I think that would be fantastic as well. I was gonna say, I feel like the closest thing we've got to this is like Cruisin' Blast a few years ago, which obviously they did not make in-house, but like,
Yeah.
I feel like Cruisin' has a very specific history tied to Nintendo, what with the whole, like, you know, Midway being like advertising the running on Ultra 64 hardware and all that, which of course was not the case, but that's a story for a different day. But yeah, yeah.
I'm glad we gave Avalanche its flowers, because it definitely deserves
I
them.
want to play it.
Yeah.
I want to play it. That'll definitely be on my list, because I didn't play any of the 1080s like I was saying for this one. Like, obviously played a lot of SSX 2012, which we've talked about, and I actually went back and revisited Steep.
Man. Yeah.
I'll talk a little bit about that one, because that's an interesting one for a variety of reasons. So, as somebody who played the beta, and then the first release, and then the major physics update 3 months later, and then the second major physics update 6 months later, and then the redefined physics engine for the Olympics DLC. It's just that perfect example of, like, Ubisoft are really odd when it comes to game support, where they will support shit you least expect to the absolute hilt. They may then delist it later down the line, but that's a different story. But, like, when you talk to somebody about Steep, they've always got a different experience of what it was, because when I played the beta, it was one of the worst things I've ever played. It was absolutely horrendous. It also ran at like 9 frames per second, but it's a beta, you kind of expect that. The launch version, I actually really enjoyed, and then they just kept tweaking the physics engine beyond that, and for me it never really hit the mark until the X Games DLC, which that was after the Olympics, and that got its own dedicated arcade like physics for that DLC as well. So that's actually really fun. It's worth actually getting the game just to try the X Games stuff, because it actually plays a lot better than the main one. It's very similar to Riders Republic. If anybody's played the snowboarding and that, it's very similar to that. But yeah, Steep's a strange one. I think it wanted to be a super serious snowboarding game, like the way Shaun White snowboarding tried to be, but it probably missed the mark. It's a fairly boring game overall, I would say, but I do enjoy just kind of chilling in it even now. Sometimes I do actually just play it purely because I don't think there's another game that just affords that much time to do absolutely nothing on the mountains. And sometimes
you should play M2 with me.
I'm into that.
You should play M2 with me and Andrew on Insignia. We'll show you how to do
Very
nothing
good.
on the
Just
mountain
turn the
for a
brain off
really
and
long
just-
time.
Yeah, dude.
Yeah, I need to try that. Yeah, Steep was. I thought Steep was decent because it's the last full-on, full-budget like snowboarding game I think we've had. Riders Republic obviously is a wider thing, but Steep in and of itself is probably the last big budget kind of snowboarding game, and they tried to support it pretty heavily. So I commend them for that at the very least.
Yeah, I didn't have quite as good an experience with it when I played it. I cannot tell you which of the 4 physics overhauls I experienced, but it definitely wasn't the X Games thing. And I just remember getting stuck on shit all the time. And
Did you beat it?
I really did not enjoy my time with that game. And it,
Get that.
I think I got it as a gift, and then I think it was from my roommate, and it was on sale and whatever, and I was like, thank you. Like, he knew I really wanted to try the game, and I did. And then I just kind of quietly sold it, because I'm like, I don't know.
It's a slow burner, and even
Yeah.
then, it's probably not worth the burn. Like, it is one of those things. If you wanted a modern snowboarding game, there were such little options,
That's true.
and the ones people wanted was SSX, which Steep wasn't. So it was always up against it from that perspective. But it is so funny if you just go on the subreddit, sort by oldest post, type in physics engine, and have a great laugh. It just like everybody like, I turn this game on and like everything is totally different. All the times that are set are still against the old physics engine. So how am I supposed to beat these times on events? And there was just a whole load of
Oh
noise.
man.
It's funny you shout that out with Ubisoft too, because like, I mean, there's a lot to talk about with the crew that we won't talk about today. But like when they came out with that, was the Wild Run update for the first game, it was like it was on like new hardware. It was like it was running on different hardware. It looks so much better overnight, and yeah, it's strange where they decide to put those resources. And also, you know, why maybe if you just held on to the game like 3 more months when we're at physics update 3, then everybody wouldn't have gotten so turned off.
Yeah. It was just the fact they didn't declare it or make it a big deal. They just kind of deployed the updates, and then in the patch notes they were like, I'll just change the entire fucking game.
That's cool, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the things for Ubisoft, obviously, like we're saying, it's a bit ironic with the current news, but I've always been amazed at how actively they support games that have like reasonable to small fan bases, but then again, when you look at what happened with like Rainbow Six Siege, and it paid off in dividends massively, they obviously feel that can happen for all of their franchises to a certain extent.
Mm-hmm.
So fair play, I guess, for the level of support.
It does kind of keep happening, though. I mean, like, the weird stuff just flies under the radar for the rest of the industry after they stop covering it, but games like For Honor and stuff, I know, just, like, were quietly huge for a long time.
Mm-hmm. 7 years of service or whatever it was is insane.
Yeah.
Just kept going.
Should I burn through this stack here really quick, and then we can get on to Amped and get the hell out of here?
What else you got?
All right. I'm just going to read off everything that I have here for the fun of it. I kept everything kind of between the PS1 to 360 era, more or less. So, first off, we got 1080.
Okay.
Second off, we got... I was like, I can do that with the first one, because I know it's just carpet behind it. I picked up a copy of Twisted Edge.
Oh, we never
on the
talked
Nintendo
about
64.
We shouldn't spend too much time on it, but I actually
We've already spent too much time on Twisted Edge.
It's great.
So
Play Twisted
I actually
Edge.
don't remember it at all.
Amazing
Feel bad.
soundtrack.
I remember playing it and being like, all right, okay, I'm getting this more than I'm getting 1080.
Dude, it would be so good if its frame rate was in the double digits. It would be the
well,
best game
unfortunately,
ever.
it's on the Nintendo 64, so you're asking a little bit too much here for textured polygons. Not everything can be F-Zero X, unfortunately. Yeah, we talked about SSX on tour. I had a lot of fun with that on PSP. Still am having a lot of fun with that on PSP, honestly. And yeah, we got Zap. We got our Cool Borders Burn. We got our Cool Borders 4. There's a loose disc of 3 in here as well, because I don't care. It's fine. What other PS1 snowboarding games? We got Final Fantasy VII. Let's see.
I knew it would come up.
Look, anytime one of my friends is turned into a cold kebab, the first thing I want to do is hit the slopes, baby. It's what Aerith would have wanted. I did spend some time with MTV Sports snowboarding on here, which I would not call Kusoge. Although it was 99 cents, which is the lowest price I have seen for a PS1 game at a used game store in these here United States in many, many years. But no, it's got like a huge licensed soundtrack, because of course it does. It's MTV. It came to us from Radical Entertainment and Toy Headquarters. I don't know. It's alright. It's fine. It's better than Cool Bars. It's there. You're not missing anything incredible by not playing it, but if you need to play a PlayStation 1 snowboarding game, you could do worse. Let's see. Yeah, we talked about 1080. We're going to get into Amped and Amped 2 here in a moment. I think Amped 1 is probably the snowboarding game I played the most over the years. We'll get into it. Yeah, we got our sun-faded SSX3. We've got a loose disc copy of On Tour in here I forgot to play. We've got it. We've got Tricky. We've got... This is actually where it gets interesting. I do have one game in here I want to actually talk about.
Sonic 3. You're getting out of Sonic 3.
If I had known that was in there, I would have brought that up with me, but that is downstairs. My apologies. I played 2 particularly strange original Xbox games for this, and I promise I have a good reason. The first of those is Transworld Surf, which is not a snowboarding game. In the early 2000s, I had a subscription to Transworld Skateboarding for a long time, because I bought a 6-month and they kept sending it to me for like 2.5 years. And it was the 2000s. I was hurting myself on a skateboard. I was vaguely into that culture for a little bit. I never played this because I assumed it sucked. And it kind of does. The water physics are interesting, but there's not a lot going on here. I remember around the launch window of the Xbox, there was like this, and like Kelly Slater's Pro Surfer, and a bunch of other things that were like trying to, like, even as a small baby child, I could tell that it was like a lot of people trying to ride the Tony Hawk success and not knowing necessarily how to translate that ideology to other sports, right? Even if it is still fundamentally a person on a board moving and doing stuff. There's just so many more limitations to surfing that I think it's more difficult to create that kind of game out of it. But Transworld did not give up there with their licensed extreme sports video games. They tapped one very specific developer to make a hell of a snowboarding game that nobody played. Well, Transworld Snowboarding. And this is the thing that I was talking about in our Discord a few weeks ago, of my surprise game that I wanted to talk about that was weirdly interesting. This was made by Housemarque.
Oh.
What? No
Yes.
way.
No way.
Seriously?
Housemarque. Returnal Resogun Housemarque. Super
Nice.
Stardust HD Housemarque
Super Stardust.
made this game, and it's extremely good.
Wait,
I don't know, man. It's just really good.
It's
just,
good
it
as well.
feels
Well,
incredible.
I'm not surprised, but jeez, I need to play it now if it's Housemarque. Like, what the
Yeah,
fuck?
I was very surprised. I didn't even know about that. I just saw it on the shelf again. I kept going to various local stores and looking for the word snowboarding on the shelf and just been like, all right, I'll grab it and take it home and see what happens. Took it home and looked at the back and saw the Housemarque logo and was very exponentially more curious suddenly. Yeah, it's super weird, but I don't know how much I have to say about it necessarily, like off the cuff to a bunch of people that have not also played it, but like, damn, dude, it's just a really good snowboarding. I'll tell you, it's not super realistic. It's not super duper SSX arcadey. It's somewhere in that amped zone in the middle. But it just feels great. It's fast. You move very quickly. Like, you rotate very quickly. It's snappy. It just is way more polished and produced than so many
I need to try this one.
It looks really good for original Xbox. It's an infogram, which I always...
Yeah, it's in that
Given
era
the
where
choice-
the Atari logo on the box means
Yeah.
infograms,
Given the
which,
choice
of course, as we
between
all know, means entertainment.
Yeah, given the choice between a game or an infogram, I go infogram every time.
No one's making grames anymore. I didn't come up with that joke. That's fine. Yeah, check that out if you have any interest in that stuff. I think you dear listeners at home.
This is gonna.
Was it only on Xbox? Wasn't on PS2?
Yeah, it's got the big old only on Xbox stamp on the front, which is usually accurate,
Right.
not always, but.
Right.
This is gonna sound a little mean as we go into Amped, but as much as I liked Amped, this is the game I think I wish Amped was. Like, it's
I think that's
a little more
probably
interesting.
I don't think that's too far off.
Yeah.
Yeah, this looks good, man. Like, just watching the gameplay, and you can see right away, like, the momentum of the border and stuff looks a lot better than some of the other games.
Yeah, they know what they're doing over there. I mean, again, not surprising, I guess, considering the studio, but it's surprising that they made it this well and then just didn't return to this concept ever again. They didn't Returnal to this concept ever again. Hey. I'm sorry. I'll see myself out.
Returnal snowboarding.
Also,
Next
just
game
like
then,
I
guess.
can't really tell if it's just like the shitty compression on this YouTube video or what, but like it looks like really good. Like the way that like
It does
some
look pretty
original
good.
Xbox games, like Rally Sport Challenge 2, where you're like they're tapping into something here. Like it looks like that. It's
early too. It's like mid 02 somewhere in there.
The lighting looks particularly good.
yeah.
Just like the
Yeah, it's got all these real-time dynamic shadows happening all over the place. Like, it's got the hidden snowmen from Amped. Maybe this is Amped to 0. I wonder if there's like some kind of lineage there. I should look that up. Because it's got a very similar like UI aesthetic to Amped 1 as well, and I'm wondering if there's something there that I should look into. I have a video of Amped 1 up on the never mind. The footage in the other window just like autoplayed to the next thing. I was like, this looks a lot like Amped 1. What? Oh, this is Amped 1. Sorry.
So they made Supreme Snowboarding and Transworld Snowboarding. It's Housemarque. They did two, Bellica thinks.
But they did. Okay. Then okay, I'll look that up later when I'm not on mic here. But
Yeah. On the website, yeah.
that's-
They've got Supreme Snowboarding.
that's our fun new rabbit hole to go down, I guess. I'm gonna check that out next as well.
Wow.
And then Amped 3 here as well, of course, which we'll get into in a moment.
yeah.
We talked about SSX 2012. We did not talk about Stoked.
Stoked.
We don't have to talk about Stoke.
I never played it, but I remember the name.
I don't remember it at all. I just found it, and it's just covered in ads and logos I've never seen before. This comes to us from a developer called Bongfish.
Just seen that.
Austrian-based Bongfish GmbH.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh my god.
I'm not sure what's going on there, but I don't know. It's perfectly cromulent. It's not bad or anything. It seems even kind of good. It's very much that, like, they found a way to make a snowboarding game look Xbox 360 brown. So, just be prepared for that color palette again.
Yeah.
But
That was the era.
Yeah. It's another snowboarding game with Travis Rice in it. He certainly got around.
Sure.
Like,
that's probably in person.
Yeah. It's just any time I look up snowboarding games now, it's like the character cast features Travis Rice, including 1080 Avalanche, SSX 2012. Like, he was the guy, but obviously not a household name to actually get any sort of leading credit.
Yeah, apparently. But yeah, I don't know, like, whatever. It's fine. It's pretty alright. And unlike SSX Blur, which is kind of a mess, but I mean, again, it's that, like, weird. Yeah, fantastic cover art. Look at that. A lot of the aesthetic stuff in that game, I think, is pretty good. And then, yeah, we got our Cool Borders 01 that did not want to spin up, and I did not care enough to get that buffed or to find another copy. We've got our SSX 1 and 3. I don't have Tricky on PS2, apparently. Or if I do, I can't find it. Then the last weird game that we kind of talked about talking about, and then eventually didn't talk about was, and probably don't need to, is Dark Summit. The weird, like, edgy espionage themed, I don't know, man. It's the most, like, 2000, 2001 video game ever made, and there's something to be said for that. I believe the Xbox
manual.
Was
I'll
launched
say
by
that much about it. The actual in-game manual, the hard copy manual is actually, like, very well detailed.
Full color?
Yeah, it talks about a story. There's some character profiles in there. There's some
We got
key
dudes.
advertisements. Yeah, so, like, you know what I mean? That's a bygone era of actually putting effort into that sort of thing, but yeah, the game's absolute shit, so.
Paul was talking about this earlier as well. It's like I think I messed around with this a little bit on a demo disc back in the day or something, but I don't think I've ever actually, like, sat down and played Dark Summit, though I've not heard the kindest words about it.
I wonder why.
I don't know that it's particularly well beloved.
It features a Nokia phone. That's the
There you
thing
go.
it's known for. There's a mission about getting a signal on Verizon network so that you can tell your pal Johnny, or whoever he's called probably in these games, that there's a summit that's pretty dark. So
It's like, the lights are all off on this mountain, man. I don't know. But yeah, I don't know. We weren't quite to the era of the T-Mobile sidekick in Tony Hawk's Project 8 yet, or whatever. So.
And Midnight Club. Yeah.
Yes,
That phone was everywhere.
yeah, Need for Speed Underground as well, I think.
Cell phones, they're in places. Singular wireless menu and
In
Need for Speed Most Wanted.
yeah.
Why are we doing free advertisements for companies? Anyway, that's my stack. We can get into Amp now. I don't really have anything else to say about all this stuff.
And
Other than it's in my house now.
we gotta do something with it. You can't let Dark Summit go to waste.
No, use every part of the Dark Summit.
Amped, man. I, despite having an original Xbox at launch, never played it until a couple weeks ago. Andrew was singing the praises of Amped, and got myself Amped 1 and Amped 2. And they're good, chilling games. That's where we're
That's
all
kind of the
start.
primary way to put it, I think. They are hangout games, for sure.
With the craziest soundtrack. I think that was weirdly, this is gonna sound like kind of like a backhanded compliment. It's a good game, but I think the thing that most impresses me is this was in the era where it was like, how do we use up all this DVD space? You know, if you're Microsoft first party, I know, let's put an entire Yellow Card album on this disc, and then also 200 other songs from bands that you've never heard of. And this was before like
96 kilobits a second.
Yeah, this was before like Yellow Card was like big. Like, I'm sure they were probably coming on, but this was like before Ocean Avenue, before all that stuff. So, yeah.
Before EA Tracks got a hold of them.
EA tracks, exactly. And Amped 2 soundtrack's even bigger. I mean, yeah, it's kind of nuts.
Yeah, so this was again, living out here in Seattle, there are a lot of you'll find a lot of used Xbox games with these Microsoft employee company store stickers on the front of them. I've seen people like freak out finding these in other places, but they're all over the place out here. I didn't know that was like a rare thing or whatever. But anyway, one day, one of my dad's friends was over and I guess worked at Microsoft and bought a copy of Amped in the store, and he was like, "Yeah, here you go." And then I just played a lot of Amped over the years, and kind of skipped 2 and didn't play 3 until a little after it was out, I believe. But yeah, I'm not sure where even to begin with this. Like, how? Somebody save me here. I can tell Paul is thinking.
Well, it's
Yeah, I mean, my memories were mainly of 3. I played 1 when it came out. I don't really remember much about it, to be honest, other than going, it looked really cool at the time, and I didn't really stick around with it for too long. But 3 was the voice was the one I played it the most on the 360, obviously launch. I bought it it was weird. Game at the time in the UK had an offer where you could you had to have King Kong if you wanted to buy 360 on launch day. You had to with the bundles, right? But
Spiritually, I agree.
But
Yes,
actually, yeah.
yeah, and they had a flyer, right? And they said there's a bundle of 4 or 5 games, I think it was. But they made a mistake on that, and it turned out you could get actually a game for free based on how much it cost. But they got rid of that offer. But if you took the flyer in, they would accept it. So I was like, well, I'll try that. And I actually ended up picking up Amped 3, going, oh, that'd give it a go. It was cool. And I ended up loving it as much as kind of Gotham and Condemned and those games and Call of Duty at the time. I thought it was fantastic. And as you were saying, the story in it is absolutely insane. Like the cutscenes in it and the style of it all, it's really, really cool. I had like a course creator where you can make your own rails and stuff and ramps and all that sort of stuff down the mountain. I don't think I'd come across a snowboarding game that really had that in it before. Obviously, Tony Hawk, not a snowboarding game, of course. I'd had the course creator in it and stuff, but that was really cool. I don't know if that was in the first Amped or second Amped at all, though.
I don't believe so, but I don't remember. If it was, it's not something that I spent a lot of time with. But yeah, like the things that were so special about this second one, I think, is probably the most interesting to talk to of the first 2. Is, I mean, it's got the weird Xbox Sports Network branding thing where it's just that weird, like, portal with a dude in it.
It's like a dude looking bored. Like, I'd rather be actually snowboarding right now instead of just standing here.
Oh, that's how you know he's a cool guy, Adam. Cool guys don't care about things. That's how you know.
Yeah.
It was in HD, 720p.
Exactly.
Yes,
So that's the other thing I was going to say is
yes.
this bad boy's in 720p and has online
cool
via Insignia
as
now, which is it's super. Dude, this game looks really good. Especially for an original Xbox game, and a lot of that is just being helped by the resolution. But yeah, it just looks really clean and vibrant and nice. It's not super over the top, but it does have a lot of like personality to it that you can see kind of developing in the first 2 games. And then by Amped 3, they're just like, no one's watching. We can do whatever we want, and they got real weird with it. Oh man,
They did.
I was looking at the gameplay footage for it, and like, it's going to be the weirdest comparison ever, but it's like a Suda 51, like No More Heroes thing going on.
Sure, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's actually not that far.
It's just like all those weird like cutscenes and stuff I was just seeing, and the weird, very, very odd. It's the first thing that popped into my head was like, this reminds me of No More Heroes for some reason. It's like very strangely specific, but
That's really cool. Yeah, I'm finally watching. I have this on my modded 360, but I have not played it yet. I played Amped 1 and 2 a fair bit. Yeah, wow, they went all out. You have these like stop motion cutscenes with the action figures and shit. It's like a diorama on acid.
Yeah, all weird like paper cutouts and
that's cool. I mean, it makes sense though, because like looking at Amped 1 and 2, I think the thing I realized is this was actually kind of doing like, I mean, you can't like get off your board in those games, right? I don't know if you can 3, but like it was kind of doing that thing that Tony Hawk started doing, like with Underground and like just more about like, like how in Amped 1, like, you gotta, like, impress the photographer. He's standing over there.
Make it famous.
Yeah, he'll make it famous. And then you get, like, photo points or whatever.
How do you spell your name?
And then they'll blog about you. Like, it's got kind of just, like, a kind of goofy sort of energy about, like, you know, you're snowboarding, and that's cool, but also, like, this whole thing's kind of a big joke. So, looking at 3, it's like, okay, it makes sense. It just completely blew up the whole spot. Neat. Could say maybe a little ahead of its time. And then also with 3, at that point they that was 2K published, whereas the first 2 games were technically first party games.
First party,
so,
yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I need to give these a go. I've never played any of them. I was a PlayStation child, didn't even have an original Xbox, so I didn't play 1 or 2, and then I didn't own a 360 either. So yeah, I've got a full snowboarding series to actually get into there, and given it's probably the second largest behind SSX, I would say, in terms of like how much people know about
it's like
it.
the closest also ran
fair.
a little bit.
Yeah, so it's definitely. I think it's definitely worth giving a go, and I'll just need to procure an original Xbox at some point. Although I think we're talking about the emulation, assuming you own a legal copy of the game, has come a long way as well.
Probably. I haven't looked into it, but I'm sure it's doable by this point.
Yeah,
but yeah, man, it's. Sorry, I'm getting distracted by these ridiculous cutscenes again. It's just they leaned so hard into at least like having some kind of soul and identity and like voice, which seems to be something that a lot of the more EA big leaning style extreme sports games through the 2000s were doing to varying degrees of success. But I think Amped 3 in particular, like they found their color palette, they found their design language, they found exactly how they wanted like downhill motion to control and the fluidity of turning and all that stuff. Like they really kind of glued it all together. I think 3 is a little bit faster and floatier maybe than 1 and 2, but it's still I don't know, it's just super satisfying. I don't know, I like all these games. The cheat codes I remember were ridiculous. I remember turning those on with the first game a lot back in the day, because the 3 that I used most often were one that would make it so that you effectively drive your boarder, and whether they're going up or downhill is irrelevant. It's just same speed, momentum, no matter what. Gravity is not affected. And then also one that I think was Mega Leg. If you launch up into the air, you'll just like hit the skybox basically and bounce off. Like you'll just go disgustingly high. And Whirly Gig that just let you spin like 2,000 times before you hit the ground. It was just a lot of ridiculous. Like I remember that being one of the last games with very silly cheat codes that just let you break it.
I feel like it's almost like,
ways.
oh, you guys want an SSX? Here's your SSX. And spin a million times a second.
But down a normal mountain that doesn't have like a wild neon city buried in the snow
right
halfway down it. But
they actually they integrate like in 3 these like 2D animations just look really good against
it's what was that last Need for Speed that I didn't
Unbound.
Yeah, it's kind of, I think part of why I bounced off that game was, or rather bounced off looking at that game, was maybe thinking back to games like this and just being like, I feel like I've seen this done better before, or in a way that just kind of fits a little more organically, I guess. I don't know. This is not me trying to throw Need for Speed on the proverbial bus here. It's just
it's not allowed.
There's so much at that. Yeah, I don't know.
What else?
I'm so tired by this point that I don't know how to talk about.
Look, we've only talked about 4 the snowboarding games.
Yeah.
And we haven't even God. I'm gonna be. I feel like I failed my younger self by not making us talk about Twisted Edge, but I'm sure there will be opportunities for that in the future.
I don't know. Like, talk about Twisted Edge, man. I don't remember it. I spent one afternoon with it.
I'm not familiar with it at all.
I don't think anyone else has played it but me.
I don't think I even put it in an actual N64. I think I just popped it in a Polymega and fell asleep on the couch.
That's go back. Your homework is to play Twisted Edge. at some point.
I've never played
Oh,
it.
right, Chemco.
Chemco. This is Boss and Chemco. This is the Top Gear
right.
Rally crew. And
Yes.
Okay.
I was playing that game yesterday. This is better than that.
yeah, I like it a lot. I mean, to me, I think like as a kid, there was something that was like 1080 snowboarding is objectively better, but also if you kind of get into a mindset of like things you liked when you were younger, when you were like a child, Twisted Edge is cooler. Like there's like I think there's like a crashed UFO on one level.
Yep, I just watched a UFO crash through a bridge or something on this other. Yeah,
and like it's a kind of N64 game where it's like they weren't really. I mean, I guess you're always kind of pushing the system if your frame rate is that low, but like it doesn't look particularly amazing. But they do cool things with like there's this one level that's like at sunset, and you just get like these really intense like purple and orange colors, and actually looks really good. And yeah, it's not realistic at all. It's less realistic than 1080. It has a really great soundtrack. It is kind of like MIDI Primus, but it actually works. And the funny thing about the soundtrack too is I read somewhere that because Barry Leitch did a lot of stuff with his songs were in Top Gear Rally as well, the N64, and so he worked a lot with Boss and whatever. And I guess they had him do the soundtrack first, and then it was a Barry Leitch soundtrack, so it was very like synthy and stuff like that. And I'm sure it was
slowly
fine.
turning the cutoff knob on a 303.
Yeah. I'm sure it was fine, but ultimately they were like, no, we don't want this. We want Primus. So they hired someone else to imitate Primus with an N64, which I know sounds awful, but it's actually pretty good. So, yeah, I like Twisted Edge a lot.
It is definitely a lot more absurd and hyper-realistic than 1080. It's a lot more cartoony.
Yeah, it's weird. Like the characters are all goofy, and I think they were like this. I think is also the case of a game that didn't launch, or that was I don't know if rush is the right word, but wasn't completely what they wanted it to be. Because I was reading that I think it was from like a Next Gen or an Edge article, a preview,
A Twisted Edge article.
Twisted Edge article by Future Entertainment. No, they for the Japanese release, which has some crazy name. It's like King Hill Snowboarding. It is not Twisted
Damn it,
Edge.
Bobby!
Yeah. King Hill 64 Extreme Snowboarding. Same exact game, way more aggro name, but they wanted to put a story mode in it, and they said because like Japanese, consumers are more receptive to that. So, but they never got around to it. Like I was trying to look up like a story mode and I couldn't find it. So, oh well.
That would have been interesting.
Yeah, all your favorite characters that they try to make you care about that you have zero history with, but
Such as snow and board.
exactly.
It's got some cool fake reflection stuff happening in the ice. Like they're doing things here. There's tech happening.
Yeah, it's a charming game. It's just the frame rate's the biggest issue. I remember it can get real slow, and which when you're a kid, it's almost like you come up with reasons for why the game is doing what it's doing. So to me, it was just like, oh, this snow's really dense. I think that's why I'm not really moving here. Yeah, it's just like it's really like
so powerful. It's
muddy.
bringing my console to his knee.
It's like wet snow, and that's why I'm moving at 3 frames a second. That's Twisted
It's just
Edge.
doing all this incredible physics simulation, all these hyper calculations. That's what it is.
Snowboarding then. Snowboarding. Is it conquered? Have we done it, guys?
I think we've done it.
We did not touch
Done it.
Snowboard Kids at all. I don't know. Those games are too expensive.
I
and
thought
not
about
that
that.
interesting. I don't care.
Yeah.
Are there any other big obvious glaring?
We'll get told off for not talking about Snowball Kids.
There was didn't they try to relaunch that in an edgy rebranding for the DS or something? It was like SBK.
Yes.
Sure.
Yeah, the DS one. I played that.
That's right.
I played every strange DS game, seemingly, and SBK was one of them. And it's actually pretty decent. It is actually a fairly okay game for the DS, but I've got a weird soft spot for those like games that should not be on the DS that got made for the DS, like Crate and Race and all that sort of stuff. It's worth trying. It's certainly something.
Snowboard Kids on the N64 had one innovation, was that it's the only snowboard game I can think of outside of what was that level, Tokyo Megaplex and SSX, where every course has laps. You get to the bottom of the mountain and then you ride a lift back to the top of the mountain and then you start your second lap. So, innovation.
Just looking at what people are saying about the DS reboot, and it's just loads of people absolutely hating the generic art style from what they had on the N64, because obviously it is so different. And then there's just somebody saying it's just a Persona Snowboard Kids edition, because obviously it's Atlas.
I mean, yeah, I was gonna say it's
yeah.
Atlas, or like PAL has the region has a Rising Star Games logo on the box, which is usually I associate that with STGs. Yeah. Like Cave and stuff like that. So that's interesting. Looks like there was a Snowboard Kids Plus on PS1. I didn't even know about that.
There was a PS1 Snowboard Kids?
It's Japan only, apparently.
Oh my god.
What?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't know about the DS game either.
Yeah, in January '99.
Oh. Well, there you go.
Is that the show then? We've gone for almost 2 hours, I think.
Just take me out back like Old Yeller, bud. I'm done.
Alright.
That is an exhaustive list of snowboarding games, though.
I think we talked about every snowboarding game.
Yeah.
I feel
every
bad
single one.
Because I wanted to play that Shredders one on Xbox.
Yeah,
and, it was too expensive, and I don't have Game Pass, so I'm sorry. But I'm sure it's very good.
Anyone play a Shaun White at any given point? Was that
played the Wii version?
No.
No.
Probably the best one, I would assume, right?
Well, he's a
it
real
had the
snowboarder.
balance board support, which was interesting.
Yeah.
I suppose. I'd say that's probably the most interesting thing about it. Very much has that feel of a Ubisoft game from that particular era, i.e. not very memorable really at all. Like, it was in that weird middle area, like kind of like I don't know, that certain time period Ubisoft just weren't making anything really of that much value, and Shaun White was kind of part of that.
I don't think I think I probably just assumed that was EA this whole time. Oh yeah, Ubisoft, look at that.
Yeah. I think it was a sequel.
Skateboarding game, all this. I don't know, guys. There's a PSP port. I might have to do my due diligence.
You've got to get it, mate.
It's my duty as a gamer American.
In regards to the PSP, actually, one of the episode ideas I thought would be really cool for a roundtable discussion would be, you've got a PSP with a Memory Stick Pro Duo. That's the
Yep.
And you can fit
Magic
You
game.
can fit 5 racing games on there. What 5 are you choosing? I think that'd be a really fun conversation, because there is a lot of good shit on there. Like, that would be fun.
Oh.
Don't you dare answer them, Andrew. We'll be here for another 3 hours.
You might kill me.
But I think that would
ready.
be a really fun roundtable discussion, just because we're mentioning the PSP, because what a fucking banger. There's just there's so much good stuff on there.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
I'd be down for that. I was just kind of really taken aback by the fact that not only are there crazy Snowboard Kids fans, but they have like hire this man Nintendo Energy, and they're trying to make a Snowboard Kids 3 in UE, and it looks good, but just God, why do people like the weirdest fucking games? I'm sorry. I don't understand it.
You're saying that on Time Extend, mate. We did an episode on Runabout.
Well, yeah, but I'm not saying Runabout deserves to come back and is like a freaking
saying Runabout
masterpiece.
deserves to come back.
Runabout should come back. Yeah.
Only if they pick up the story where they left off with the
with Double Steel 2, the second Clash, the final Runabout game, because it was developed by the same people. Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
I didn't Runabout game. Wow.
I spoiled too much.
We should actually have a Reckless Double Steel episode, because I only have the first one, and I would talk about that.
We can talk offline. There may be some friends of the show working on some things behind the scenes involving that series.
Sounds good.
Andrew leaking all the details here.
I know what you're talking about. I didn't say nothing.
All right, that's it. We got to shut the show down.
That's
We can keep rambling forever. Thank you everybody for listening to Time Extend. See you later.
Thanks for listening, guys.
See you later.
Your time has just been extended.
I just realised I didn't fucking cover the SSX 20.